Welcome back in, folks. Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. 609-9199-D200. Roll along as we recap football on a Monday. Take you up until 6 p.m. Time right now in the Princeton Orthopedic Associates Studios, 5:15. One man who's in a good mood, that's the former Redskins quarterback, Joe Theismann. Always love talking to Joe, and he's kind enough to hop on board with us for a few minutes right now. Joe, how are you? Appreciate a few minutes.
You're welcome, Zach. Always good to catch up with you.
Well, thank you for coming on. So last night I was watching the end of that Sunday night game, and with about 6 minutes left, I started to fall asleep. I was getting tired from sitting on my couch all day watching all those games, and I wake up and I see Dan Snyder jumping up and down, and in the background is Joe Theismann. Why didn't you get involved with that action in the owner's box last night? I wanted to see you jump up and down and get excited.
Actually, they didn't have me on camera, but there were a number of times that I jumped up and down and got excited. When we scored, when Jamison Crowder had the big play, when Pierre Garçon had the big play. I mean, I was up and down a lot, so they didn't quite catch me on camera. I was actually texting my wife at the time that Dan was all excited. But, it's just so great, to see, I guess you could say, another side of Dan because, when you think about the men that own football teams and the families that own football teams, there's somewhat of a stoic nature to them. And Dan was just a fan, always has been. And I think it was great that he got so excited about, winning a very big football game for us. I mean, you lose that game last night, and it throws a damper on the Thanksgiving Day game in Dallas. Now it just makes it more fun, more exciting.
Really, the biggest surprise in all of football this year has been the NFC East, because before the year, people were kidding them, saying, it's the NFC least, probably 9 wins, going to win that division, maybe even go 500. They have 3 teams, if the season was to end today, that would be in the playoffs. Did you ever see this coming out of the NFC East? And finally, how many teams do you think are going to get in when it's all said and done?
No, I'd lie to you and say I saw it coming. I thought Dallas would be pretty good. I thought Ezekiel Elliott would be good. I didn't realize he'd be as tremendous as he's been. Didn't expect Dak to be the quarterback. I mean, he had 2 new coaches, one in New York, one in Philadelphia. You've got a new quarterback in Philadelphia. The Redskins were coming off of a playoff loss. You didn't know quite what you were going to expect from them this year. There were an awful lot of questions about the NFC East on every football team. I thought the Redskins would be one of the top 2 teams in the AFC. In the NFC East. So, but to see what the Giants have done, winning 5 straight, to see, Philadelphia is like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Each week, you're not sure who's going to show up. So that makes them an interesting and exciting team. And the Redskins are playing nice and consistent football. And this is certainly a monumental test for them. It's about time a Redskin-Dallas game had some significance on a Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, right. It's going to be a fun one on Thursday after you get the turkey, or in my case, a lasagna in, and we're going to watch a lot of football on Thursday as Joe Theismann joins us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. Yeah, you just got into a little family secret, Joe. We don't do turkey on Thanksgiving. We do lasagna.
Hey, listen, you're not the first one I've heard that from, believe me. I think everybody has to celebrate in their own way. Do you at least have pumpkin pie?
No, we do this cookie cake. What happens is, Joe, we do this cookie cake. It's these Nabisco wafers. You make heavy cream. It sits in the fridge for about 4 days, and you cut it on Thursday, and everyone's happy.
Well, you know what? That's a great substitute then. That's terrific.
All right, well, let's get to the Eagles, because you're right. They've been up and down, but kind of expected with a rookie head coach and a rookie quarterback. You know what it takes to be a great quarterback in this league. You've seen 10 games of Carson Wentz. What are your impressions?
I like him a lot. I mean, even in the beginning of the year, I liked the way he had an opportunity to throw the football. Now he's 10 games into his season. The college season is over for him. Now now things start to take effect. And you see people defending him a little bit differently now than they did in the beginning of the year. The defensive coaches start to build books on players, find out what he's comfortable with, find out where the blitz pressure creates a little bit of an issue for him. The minutia that defensive coaches go into is quite amazing when it comes to preparing for an offense or a particular quarterback. And I think in the case of Carson Wentz, you've got a young man that's got a very bright future, throws the ball very well. Philadelphia's basically, I think, led by their defense at this point. But certainly Carson, as he grows into the offense, will give Doug more and more opportunities to expand the offense a bit. Anytime you're dealing with a young guy, it's a question of being able to just give him what he can handle, and you don't want to overload him because you start thinking too much on the football field. You just don't play as efficiently, and I think that's what they've done down in Dallas with Dak. I mean, he plays behind probably the best offensive line in football. I think the Redskins, the Raiders, and probably the Dallas Cowboys have the three best offensive lines in football at this stage. So that certainly helps a young quarterback as well.
With Carson Wentz, and I think he's a tremendous quarterback, but he's getting a lot of criticism today, and I don't think that's necessarily fair because you're right. They are based around their defense, but you look at that offense, Joe, an injured offensive line, missing your right tackle for a suspension with PEDs, and the backup right tackle goes down yesterday, and he's also throwing to no-name wide receivers. If I'm a defensive coordinator, Joe, for the rest of the season, I'm daring this guy to throw the ball 35 times because his wide receivers, they can't get any separation. So if teams stop the run, that's how you beat the Eagles right now, Joe, when I look at it.
Yeah, and Zach, who did they play yesterday, Zach?
The Seahawks, exactly. You're right.
In
it's amazing.
Seattle. Let me just say this. Anybody who criticizes a quarterback going into Seattle, especially with Russell getting healthier and that football team getting – anybody that criticizes somebody going into Seattle has no earthly idea what they're talking about when it comes to playing the game of football. Single toughest place to play, especially now. They're finding themselves. Their secondary is basically in place. Their defensive line is in place. You know, I know the Ravens and other teams have rankings above them, but you go into Seattle, that's a handful to handle. So for somebody to say, well, Carson's this and Carson's that, I think the young man has done extremely well. And he played in a really tough place. And now next time, if he ever ventures that way again, it'll be a little bit easier for him to understand the magnitude of what it's like to play in Seattle.
Could not agree with you more, and that's been something I've been saying on this show each and every day, and especially today as Joe Theismann joins us right now. Joe, though, one consistent problem, though, has been these wide receivers. They continue to drop the football, and Nelson Agholor has been target number one. Yesterday, does not line up correctly, doesn't get on the line of scrimmage, negates a touchdown, and then the following play drops a big 20-plus yard, which would have been a catch if he holds on to the football. That timing, for some reason, Agholor and the National Football League has been a big disappointment, a first-round draft pick a year ago. How does this guy get going in the right direction? And as a quarterback, how do you build that chemistry? Because right now, it's not there with Nelson Agholor, and he's been really bad.
Well, I think the important thing is he's got to get his head out of his rear end. I mean, you know, if you're a wide receiver and you line up wrong, all you need to do is look down the line and see the ball or turn into an official. I mean, it's all, you know, our game is all about the little details. It's lining up correctly. It's not grabbing somebody when you're trying to block. You know, what he needs to do is he needs to take his job more seriously because there will be somebody that will replace him if he continues to make mistakes. And this is a reality that these kids have to understand. If you bust your rear end to become a professional football player, you're drafted number one. There's an expectation for you. And it isn't physical. It isn't just running out there and trying to catch the football. There's all the elements that deal with professionalism. And the most important, I mean, wide receivers jumping off sides. For what? You can't even hear anybody, and you're going to jump off sides. Lining up in the wrong position. Don't you know where you're supposed to be on a particular formation? Dropping the football, pure concentration. Pure concentration. So, you know, for lack of a better term, get your head out of your butt and start playing football like you're expected to. See, you know, this is something that's unique. In New England, for example, there's an expectation of excellence. If you don't meet that expectation, you're gone. Where does Philadelphia turn to if they get rid of them?
No
or sit them down?
They don't have any wide receivers. That's the problem.
Well, here's the thing. Then why not try and be special instead of just being one of the guys? That would be my comments to him. Why don't you try and be special? They thought enough of you to make you a number one pick, which is rare in itself. And this is and you're not trying to be everything that you can be or should be. When you're dropping the football, it's focus and concentration. When you line up in the wrong place, it's focus and concentration. Nobody questions your physical skills, or else you wouldn't have been taken number one. So why not just get your head out of your butt and start playing like you're supposed to?
Joe, if you were a quarterback, let's say you're in Carson Wentz's position, and you know all these quarterbacks and head coaches, they talk before each and every week before they go over the game plan. Would you maybe say to the coach, maybe we sit down Nelson Agholor this week?
No, absolutely not. You have to distinguish. There's coaches and there are players. Coaches make personnel decisions. Players execute the plays that are called by coaches. Maybe if you're, and you wouldn't even see it, maybe a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning, but I don't even think that would happen. You just don't want to get into coaching personnel because, number one, you have enough to deal with on the field and in preparation for a game with the game plan. It's the job of the general manager. It's the job of the coaching staff to make sure that the proper amount of people around you are capable of getting the offense where it's supposed to go. It's their job. It's not my job to go to a coach and say, hey, this guy's not performing. Everybody knows he's not performing. Heck, you know he's not performing. And if you have nowhere to go, you can't sit him down. You just got to figure out a way to build up his confidence enough so that he becomes more focused and does a better job. And that starts in practice. That's, you only really, Zach, when you stop and think about how much a professional football player practices, with the stupid NFL players agreement with the league where you can't be at a facility January, February, and March to work on your trade, which, by the way, that is something that the NFL ought to seriously take a look at because the product gets hurt because of it. But if you can't be, you got to find a way to make yourself better. I mean, I guess my question to him would be this, real simple. Does this job mean anything to you?
Well,
and if it does,
Joe,
what are you going to do about it?
Joe, I think the job does mean something to him because you hear his remarks yesterday. He talks about how he's disappointing the fans and he apologizes to the fans. But you're right.
Well, stop apologizing.
You're right. You
stop
need to
apologize.
You're right. You need to show it because they're simple things. They're mental errors they need to change. And you know what, Joe? I fear that this kid's never good at change, and I believe playing in a big city hurts him because he's not mentally tough enough to get a little criticism in a big city.
Yeah, that's something to be. He's a young kid still, but there are things like I said. You're a full mini camp, training camp, 10 games into a season. You're well into a season right now. So whatever you did in college is now you're working on your graduate degree. I mean, now professional football becomes professional football the last 6 weeks of the season, and the Philadelphia Eagles are right in the hunt for a wild card. You never know what's going to happen to Dallas. Injuries occur. I don't know. They're playing so well across the board. And like I said, you got Ezekiel Elliott, who is vying for both Rookie of the Year and probably MVP. You've got Dak Prescott in the same exact situation. And their offensive line is good. Des Bryant is all excited about life. Jason Witten is just a great stabilizing effect offensively. I mean, this is something that a young man has to realize, that this game has significance, and it's a job. It's just like you take your job seriously. The people listening take their job seriously. Instead of apologizing, you go to the coach and say, what can I do to get better? You help me. I want to get better. And then go do it. Because in the end, it's a performance-based system. You play well, you play. You screw up, they'll find somebody to replace you, I promise.
Wrapping up with Joe Theismann on the Zach Gelb Show right now, Fox Sports 920, The Jersey. You mentioned a lot about the Cowboys' best record in the NFC. Who'd you rather play in the playoffs? Who do you think's a better team, Seahawks or Dallas?
Oh, wow. Depends on where you play them. I think the Seahawks are a different football team away from Seattle. I think the Dallas Cowboys are a football team that's still trying to find themselves. So if you take a veteran team that has been to the Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl, almost won 2 in a row, and you take a football team that has a young quarterback, a young running back, and is still sort of growing at a very, very pleasant place for Cowboy fans, growing into themselves, you'd have to lean towards the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, and I think that experience does help a lot.
Well, you don't want to play. Let me put it this way: you wouldn't want to play them.
No, but it would be interesting if that's the NFC Championship game, Seattle and Dallas in Dallas, because I want to see, and I think that Dak Prescott has been incredible this year, so Ezekiel Elliott. I'll praise them for the way they're playing. They deserve it. I want to see, though, how they play in the playoffs. Rookies in the playoffs, sometimes they can't live up to that pressure. I'm curious to see that, too.
Nah, Zach, that's a myth.
Okay.
That's a myth. Believe me, the way these young men are playing, you could stick them out on the on an aircraft carrier somewhere, and I don't think they'd be affected by the rolling of the seas or what's been going on. When you put a uniform on in the National Football League, you represent yourself, you represent the team, you represent the city. Everybody's. It's funny. It's like everybody has just emerged again as a Dallas Cowboy fan. I see more stars around all over the place. Once again, I mean, everybody's excited about the Dallas Cowboys. That's what's going to make Thanksgiving Day so much fun. So when the Redskins go to Dallas and beat them, that just even makes it sweeter.
All right, I like that. And you know what? The fans in Philadelphia and also the fans in New Jersey right now that root for the Giants, they like that too because everyone hates Dallas. Let's talk about the Giants real quickly, though. What do you see out of the Giants? Because they're 7-3, but it's not an impressive 7-3.
7-3 is impressive. There's no if last time I looked at the paper, there wasn't an asterisk by the New York Giants, and it's like a birdie is a birdie in golf. Doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you get there. There are no pictures that show you not quite getting there. I think the Giants have been able to find ways to squeak by and win football games, and they did it again on Sunday. They hang on, they do just enough. Everybody's talking about Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott as MVPs of the league. They talk about Tom Brady coming back. Somebody's name that should be mentioned, and that's Eli Manning, because they really don't have a tight end presence. They have not been able to run the football, and the $200 million they spent on defense hasn't really shined it's more like a $100 million versus a $200 million. And yet Eli does the same thing every week. He'll throw one or two balls to the other team, and then when it gets down to the end, when a critical time rolls around, he makes some great throws. And you've got Odell. Odell's like Dez. You get these two guys excited about playing football and things are going well, they just roll. I mean, they love the limelight. They love the pressure. To them, it's not pressure. It's just a stage to be able to perform. And then the young Shepard, the young wide receiver as well in New York, and defensively, like I said, they sank an awful lot of money into this time of year, by the way. I remember when Coach Parcells was coaching in New York, to him, running the football and having a good kicking game were very, very important in November and December, because in New York that the weather's going to be tough. In Philadelphia, the weather's going to be tough. Even in D.C., you're going to get weather to deal with. And so they build the football team accordingly. And, the Giants, Ben's done a nice job taking over for this football team. But that, to me, that whole football team's driven by what Eli's capable of doing.
Yeah, he sets the tone, Eli. I will say, though, I think that defense, it's the most impressive part to me this year, and you see the stuff Landon Collins is doing. It's just unbelievable. 3 pass deflections yesterday, an interception late, JPP and snacks. So what do you think this defense, since it doesn't sound like you're very high on them, needs to improve on before you get into playoff football?
I just think that they it isn't I'm not high on them. It's just that you haven't seen the impact quite yet. And Landon's unbelievable. I mean, every game the kid makes an interception or a critical play. Really, really a special football player. And, defensively, the guys up front are getting better and bigger, and a bigger presence. I'd like to see them, not the last game of the season when they play the Redskins, but I'd like to see that defense take over a game. Right now, the offense takes over a game and wins it for them to a large degree. I'd like, if you're a Giant fan, I want to see the defense put their ears back and make a quarterback's life miserable for the last quarter of a football game.
Now,
I mean, that's something I'd be looking for.
Now, before we let you run, Joe Theismann, final one on the way out here. A few days ago was actually the 31st anniversary, and I know you're aware of this, of the Lawrence Taylor hit. Just since that's always brought up in this area whenever they hear the name Joe Theismann, which, a lot of other things should be brought up because you are from New Jersey and went on to be a tremendous quarterback. Just what do you remember from that Lawrence Taylor hit all these years removed?
It's still, I can close my eyes today and still feel the moisture on my back and see the faces around me and smell the smells of RFK Stadium and see the big clock at about 10:05. It was like 10:05 p.m. The conversations that I've had with Lawrence, he still keeps trying to get a percentage of my settlement. I keep telling him he can't have it. But we've been friends for many years, and I guess if you're gonna leave the game the way I left the game, you may as well go out by the greatest player that ever played a particular position. And I get a kick out of people talking about, he's like the next Lawrence Taylor. There's only one Lawrence Taylor. There's only been one. There only will be one. And in his own unique style and way, both on and off the football field. Michael Jordan. No, he's the next Michael. No, there's not. There's only one Michael Jordan. Fighters. He's got a little bit of Mike Tyson in him, a little bit of Muhammad Ali. No. Every one of the greatest of the greats have distinguished themselves in a very unique way. And, like I said, in the case of LT, I saw him not too long ago up at an auto session we did up in Jersey. And it's always great for me to go home, near South River where I grew up. And all my friends are still there. I remember as many guys from my high school football team as I do from any teams I've played on that have, won Super Bowls or been in championships. But, my day with Lawrence or my evening with Lawrence will always be something I will never forget.
Now, Joe, I always love when you come on the show, but last time you were on the show, you were bragging about the Fighting Irish before they played my Temple Owls, and you ended the interview by saying, "Go Irish." Irish not looking too good this year, Joe.
How about I end this one by "Help the Irish"? We've got USC this week, who looks mighty good. We lost a tough one again, another tough one to Virginia Tech. But it's funny. It's the game of football. Really, if somebody just takes a pencil and paper and watches a football game, you can write down maybe four or five key plays that determine the outcomes of games. If they go in your favor, you win. If they don't, you lose. That has been the story of Notre Dame football this year. Whether it's in a Duke game, you're in control of the game. All of a sudden, a punt hits one of our guys on the foot. They get great position, changes momentum. The Virginia Tech game, you're in control of it, and then all of a sudden they come storming back. And it's the Navy game. I mean, game after game after game, you talk about opportunities lost. And, if they can go out to Southern California and beat the University of Southern California there, because I think the Trojans are playing really good football right now, that'll be a feather in the cap of the University of Notre Dame. And it's going to be a great test for them this weekend coming up. But we've always liked big tests. They've always stepped up in big games. And, it'll be a chance for Deshaun to be able to do some things that he's going to have to do to help this football team win.
Joe, appreciate the time. Thanks so much. Let's do it again real soon.
Zach, always good catching up with you. Take care. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
You too. Enjoy that pumpkin pie. Appreciate it, Joe.
Enjoy your lasagna. Bye.
Joe Theismann joining us on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. Interesting take about the Giants defense. Because I thought yesterday, and when you play the game, you see it a whole lot differently than someone that just talks on the radio the next day about the game. I thought that the Giant defense won them that game yesterday. I was surprised he was a little bit down on that Giant defense. Excellent take, though, on Nelson Agholor. Really good take. That guy just needs to wake up. He needs to start playing because they're little mental mistakes. Those things should not be happening at the National Football League level. Maybe one or two times I get it, but not consistently over and over and over again. And by the way, let's give a big round of applause to Joe Theismann. Because anyone that's critical of Carson Wentz through these first 10 games, they don't know football. He's playing with a banged-up offensive line and wide receivers who stink. His best wide receiver is Jordan Matthews. Jordan Matthews on most teams is a number 2 wide receiver. I just love when Joe Theismann comes on this show and schools people with that football knowledge and does it very eloquently. This is the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. We'll take a break. Time right now in the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studios, 5:40. One more segment to do. When we get back, we have a Monday Night Football game to break down, and we'll go around the league. And also, Charlie Strong, fired, not fired, not fired. What an interesting story. We'll get into that next.